I'm going to hit the button now.
Right, great.
Go.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Mental Health Family Hour. So, today we're going to be talking about domestic abuse and young people, and we're joined by four guests today who I'm really excited for speaking with us today. So, if you are new to this webinar series, my name is Sam Tyrer. I'm the Prevention and Engagement Lead at Lancashire and South Cumbria Foundation Trust. I'm also the founder of an educational service called Change Talks, which basically aims to prevent ill health in young people. And I'm also the co-host of this show. Dave.
And I am Dave Cottrell, aka Mindset by Dave. It's true, my mum actually called me that. It's on my passport and everything. I am a mental health advocate online who helps educate people and has lived experience by having spent my entire life with bipolar disorder as well.
That's the shortest one you've done.
I'm getting better.
Yeah, that is the shortest one you've done, I must admit.
We've got more guests today, you know. I need to shut up.
Well, so if anyone has any questions or comments, then you can put them into the chat as we go along, and Dave will monitor that. We'll leave the questions until the end, so please do bear with us if you ask them early on. If you do want to email me following this webinar, then email me on sam.tyrer, so that's Tyrer at lscft.nhs.uk. And some of the services that we'll be speaking about today, we will put links in the YouTube description following this live stream. So, welcome to our guests. Now, I'm just going to go across the screen and ask people to introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with you, Liam. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, good morning, Sam. My name's Leanne Cobham. I am currently one of the specialist safeguarding practitioners for LSCFT. So kind of my, I suppose, background and area of, for want of a better word, expertise is children's safeguarding. Prior to coming into the safeguarding team, I work with children and families with complex and additional health needs. So again, come across lots of families where kind of they've had intrafamilial violence, that kind of thing. Quite a few of the families that I work with have had children with additional needs. So I've got quite a range of experience that hopefully I'll be able to share today.
Brilliant, thanks, Leanne. And Robin?
Yes, I'm Robin Ashfield. I work at the Wish Centre as a children and young persons worker, working with kids and young people on programmes, one of which is RIP, which supports families where the child is harmful towards parent or carer.
Which I'm really looking forward to hearing about. We have had the Wish Centre on before, and it was a really popular episode as well. So thank you for joining us. And Soph, and you'll notice from Soph's accent, she isn't actually from around Lancashire or South Cumbria.
No, I'm not. Hi, I'm Soph. I'm a parent of a child that has been giving me domestic abuse for the last 5 years. And I'm here to tell you what it feels like from my point of view.
Thank you, Soph. And me and Soph have spoke beforehand, and Soph has made us aware that she may get upset throughout this webinar, but just to let the people know that are listening, we do have a debrief afterwards. We ask the guests to stay on, so we wouldn't just turn it off at the end and expect people to get on with their lives. We'll ensure that Soph is okay. I'm really grateful for you talking about your experiences. So thank you very much for joining us today. So Les.
Morning, my name's Reid. I'm the Domestic Abuse Support Coordinator for Blackpool Council. Many years ago, I started off life as a police officer in Merseyside, as you may tell by my accent. And then I went to Wigan and I worked with young people who weren't going to school and studied for a degree in CAMS. And now I'm at Blackpool. There's only me that kind of really covers domestic abuse within the council. So anything domestic abuse related, I get involved in. I want to raise awareness of healthy relationships, and I'm also going to be working with Robin very shortly on this young people's programme that's about to start in Blackpool.
Well, I think this is going to be a really interesting episode. We've got a real mixed array of people, so thank you for you all for joining us. So how we normally start these webinars is we do normally start with the sort of lived experience element, and then we'll touch on what services are available throughout Lancashire and South Cumbria, and hopefully we might mention some beyond as well. So Soph, could I first ask you, please, just to talk about your experiences? I know how difficult it's going to be, so if you ever need to take a moment, then please do.
Okay, so I'm a single parent I've got my own mental health conditions. I've got EUPD. I've had it forever. I've got 2 boys that I look after. The younger one, who is 13, has been abusive towards me since they were 8. And the older version has got additional needs in higher functioning autism. He's got ADHD and other processing delay, all sorts of things. So we're quite a complex family before you even start looking at what's going on between myself and my youngest. The youngest is lovely. He's a lovely kid. He's bright, intelligent, kind, articulate. He could do amazing things, but we've got stuck. So his first level of abuse to me was he attempted to stab me on the way to school one day when he was 8. And I was so shocked that when I actually got into school, I just burst into tears on the head teacher's shoulder. And at that point, we got referred to family outreach, and the family outreach worker had a really good relationship with the school that my son attended. Unfortunately, his violence escalated, and it wasn't just physical violence, it was verbal violence, and it was only ever towards me. And that pattern has remained. So at the beginning, he felt no remorse at all, and that was just terrifying. He enjoyed it. He admitted that he enjoyed hurting me. As a parent, that's just terrible. It's just the worst. You love your children, that's just inbuilt. But when your child is hurting you to such an extent that he's making you frightened of him, that is just terrible. It's all my fault. I can't help but think that. He's lived with me. He used to see his dad, but he hasn't seen his dad in the last 2-3 years. And the behaviour's got worse. So it's all about control. So the child he's got ADHD, and he's got probably some sort of anxiety related issue to me. I've never really sat very well with the ADHD diagnosis. He's got behaviours that are really similar to ODD, oppositional defiance disorder. He defies me and is oppositional about every single thing I ask him, from whether it be cleaning his teeth or going to school. He's a habitual non-attendee at school. It's been like that since year 6. He had a terrible experience in year 6 and everything just went wrong. Since then, he's gone to an upper school that have been outstanding. They couldn't have done any more to try and support myself and him. Unfortunately, the problem lies in getting the child out of bed. So from the moment I woke him up, I would get verbal crap off of him. He would tell me I was horrible. He hated me. He wanted me to die. He would tell me how he wanted to kill me. He would physically hurt me. He shut me in rooms. He's hit me. If he doesn't get the reaction he's looking from me, he hurts his brother. I've had times when I am pulling the kids apart and they have got red marks around their neck where they've attempted to strangle each other. It just got horrendous. He gets a knife with a serrated edge. He holds it through to his throat, and he tells me he's going to kill himself if I don't do whatever he wants me to do. He runs away and tells me that he's going to die. He's going to tell everybody. He's going to phone social care. It's like, great, I've already got social worker. And it's been going on and on and on and on. It's demoralizing. It destroys my confidence. It makes me feel like a terrible parent. If other parents see this happening, they blame it on me. Got to be you. Why can you control your child, particularly when he was younger? But now he's 14 stone and 6 foot. Not such an issue now. People can see that I might have a problem. It's a terrible thing to be abused by your child because it's not talked about. It's just swept under the carpet. And it's got to be the most lonely thing ever. I mean, I've got an autistic child too, so I know what meltdowns in public feel like. I can tell the difference between an autistic meltdown and a massive hissy fit that the younger version is doing just to get to my attention. From the outside, it looks exactly the same. But if you know the kids that you're involved with, that is really different. So again, it's all my fault. And why can't you sort it out? And the worst thing, but I've had to call the police on my son And the police have been brilliant, absolutely excellent. They've been response officers, they've been just the best. But they're stuck because you can't take a child into custody. They can't remove the child from me. They can talk to them, and they do. And sometimes that works, but sometimes it will make it worse. And they know that by leaving me with that child, that it's all going to happen again, and I'm going to get hurt again. So whereas I'm glad that many things are child-centric, because of course the child is the vulnerable person. But in this equation where I'm the vulnerable person, I'm the victim, and my child abuses me, and there isn't support for us, and we're not accounted for. And then the legislation is not written in our favour, it's written in the child's favour. So we've got an uphill struggle before we even start to think about how it might feel to be us. And I'm sure that yourselves have all dealt with parents like me and kids like mine. But from a parental point of view, it's just such hard work. The day in, day out grind of a kid that's been like that to you. He called me a bitch multiple times a day for weeks recently. I'm not a bitch. So the most recent instalment in our lovely family soap opera rather, is he got really aggressive to me again about going to school because I couldn't get him out of the house and I can't get him in school, and when he gets to school he won't get out of the car, and so it goes on. And he threatened me again, and this time he got a knife again and said he was going to kill himself if I left. And I left him because I can't do this all the time. And I took myself to school and I had a chat to his LSA, who's an ex-police officer who is just brilliant and knows us really well. He's been working with us for 18 months. And the school called the police this time, not me. And the police officers turned up a bit later. They were response officers. And they really made me think. They made me think, how do I protect myself and my eldest child from my youngest child? They were talking about putting reinforcements in the doors and an alarm. But what I realised is I can't keep myself and my eldest child safe. So we've taken really drastic measures. We've moved. And my youngest child is now in respite with my sister and her partner. And I don't live with them anymore. I live with my other child and my mum. We are looking for a house, by the way. But at the moment, I'm sleeping in my mum's sitting room block. And you know what? It's so much easier. It is working, but both myself and my youngest are now really worried about putting us back together again. What will happen? Will it just repeat itself? Because he's still not at school. He's got an EHCP, it's just been approved, and it's going through the rigmarole whether the school will accept him. But we've still got this nightmare problem of getting him out of bed and into school, which will just trigger the violence. And I can't see a way out anymore. I can't help him anymore. I've done so much. I've been through so many hoops. We've been through social care twice. We've just been closed and it all fell apart again. Social workers are put under pressure to get rid of us because they've got a massive amount of people that need that help and there are not enough of them. The area that I live in just had an absolutely terrible report about their social care system, which wasn't really helping matters much. The same problem with CAMS. CAMS were absolutely outstanding with my eldest. They haven't been anything like as good with my youngest. And that's again because they're overstretched. Like I said, the police have been awesome, but they can't do it either. They've got the same problem. It's not, and the legislation is written in the child's favour, not the adult, even if the adult is the victim. It's really difficult. The youngest is now seeing a private psychologist who is excellent, but I'm still not confident that there is a solution to this. So the barriers in my family is how on earth to get him to go to school and stay there and not be aggressive and kick off. He's capable of great harm. And how do you repair the relationship between myself and my son that is in tatters? And I don't trust him. I love him so much and I want to help him, but I can't. And to admit that is truly awful pain. I think that's enough for me.
Can I come here, Sam?
Yeah, of course you can.
First of all, so can I just say how brave you are and how wonderful you are? And every day I can see is a challenge for you. There's a couple of things that sort of struck me with what you've said. and I'll talk to you first of all with my police hat on, right? If he is assaulting you or threatening to assault you and you are in fear, it makes no difference what age he is, as long as he's over the age of 10, he can be arrested. Now, I know that's a terrible, terrible position for a parent to be in, to make that decision, to make a statement, to have your son arrested. But maybe, just maybe, a little bit of time in a cell might wake him up a bit. I don't know. But you are a victim, as you said, and you are entitled to be protected as well. So if the police say they can't arrest him, they can. And believe me, I have arrested 14-year-olds and younger. So that's my first sort of thing that struck me with my police hat on. But the thing that you said as well was something terrible happened to him when he was in Y6. Do you feel you could share that with us? You don't have to if you don't want, but it sounds like it might be significant.
It was a teacher-child clash. So he's always struggled in school, don't get me wrong. His ADHD makes him hard work. He's a bright, clever kid. He'd cause all sorts of trouble. And he'd lie all the time. But up until year 6, the teachers had recognised that if they give him a job to do and a role within the class, then that would be it. He would cope. But the year 6 teacher, for reasons completely unknown to me, refused to look at his past history in the school and refused to accept that there was anything particularly wrong with Sam. Wrong is the wrong word, but you know what I mean. And they not only did that, but the head teacher, who at the time was the SEN lead, told me there was nothing wrong with him. Didn't have any additional needs. It's just rubbish. Just pencil. I get cross. Stop now. I silly rude words. But that's what it was. It was a teacher clash. She just refused to have anything to say that there was anything wrong with them. Therefore, refused to do anything to potentially support him. And it went wrong.
So can I just say as well that I just want to repeat what Les said in regards to how brave you are for sharing your experiences, and I thank you very much for being so open and painting a true picture of what it's like for yourself, and I'm sure many other parents out there that may be watching this currently as well. Am I okay to ask you a few questions? Is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
So just to start with, when your son was first abusive towards you, was you then straight away willing to go and talk to someone or tell them that happened, or was you quite fearful about having that conversation? Did you sort of question yourself at first, or was you like, this has just happened to me, and you went to talk to someone straight away, or did you sort of cover it up?
No, I talked to somebody straight away because I was just in shock. I couldn't quite believe he'd just done that.
Yeah.
But life was complicated because of the relationship between myself and their dad, which has never been very good, and that just made matters worse. Yeah. So it was a complicated time.
Yeah.
But I was never ashamed of it. I was shocked by it and scared by it, but wasn't ashamed.
Mm-hmm. And you rightly shouldn't be. And I think just to say as well, we've already spoke before this call before, and I just want to say that I do think you're a very amazing woman, and you're also an amazing mother. You know how much you do love your children, and you've had to make this really hard decision, but that is for the benefit of them as well currently. Dave, I think what will be good as well, the question you asked before we went live, I think will be also good to ask as well. I know you've already answered this question and everyone's contributed to it, but I thought it'd be good to get on the live stream also.
Yeah, my question was more from the kind of the care point of view, so probably for the people who work in a service, it's like, is there any kind of, for handling, well, for want of a better word, behavioural issues? It's like there's Soph's got experience with both a presumed neurotypical, but as you said, you think he might have ODD as well, child, and then a high functioning autistic child. So is there any difference kind of between when this kind of behaviour is coming from a neurotypical child or a neurodivergent child?
There's definitely a difference.
Yeah. Because you said before that there's that you noticed the difference in the way these behaviours are expressed as well.
Yeah. So the younger version, the one without ASD, he has always been able to verbalise, but he doesn't have a range of emotional responses to things. So he's either happy or angry. There's nothing else. He's like Marmite, love it or hate it. The autistic version, he processes things really slowly. So he might be getting angry about something that happened last week or possibly last year, who knows? And he does it differently. So if he really, really kicks off and goes into a proper autistic meltdown, which thankfully nowadays are rare, he's not there anymore. If you look into his eyes, he's just not there. He'll be screaming and shouting and kicking and breaking things and self-harm, all of that, but he's not in. If you look into the eyes of the younger version when he's doing something that looks exactly the same, oh, he's very definitely there, and he likes it.
I'll just come in on that as well, kind of, I suppose, talking from my experience, both as a professional and as a parent. My youngest child is high functioning ASD. And certainly when he was younger, I mean, kind of, you know, toddler, preschool time, he could be, I don't like using the word violent because it was more frustration. If he became overwhelmed, became frustrated, he would lash out. You know, even for himself, he was saying about the self-harm, you know, he'd bang his head, he'd slap himself, but he would quite often bite me or hit out at me. But it was that, in hindsight, at the time, it was like, oh my God, what is going on? But in hindsight, now knowing the difficulties he's got, actually, it was frustration. And as he's got older and we've been able to manage his ASD and recognise his triggers and that kind of thing, you know, we've been able to redirect that. And I think certainly from a sensory seeking behaviour as well, and children that I've worked with, like I said, my background before coming into this role was working with children with additional and complex needs. And a lot of the time, the lashing out, the self-harm, the lashing out to parents is for sensory feedback. So there is ways and means of redirecting that behaviour, and I think it's really important to recognise the difference between those behaviours that are linked to you know, a neurodivergent order, and those behaviours that are more for want of a better word, environmental. And you can see the differences, and I think as a parent and for other parents that I've worked with, it's being able to recognise what those differences are and being able to take appropriate action for those different behaviours, because you do end up with some children who actually will display both behaviours that you need to deal with very, very differently.
I agree completely. But I have to say that for all parents out there that are dealing with kids that are violent towards them, they must remember that actually they have to keep themselves safe. You're no good to your children if you're hurt. So you have to keep yourself safe. And if that means that you are shutting the door between you and that child, and you know that they are causing themselves harm, you have to do it. It's so hard, but you have to. And you have to wait until they've calmed down to talk to them, because they can't communicate when they're up there. They're not able to. The brain's shut down. So they can't do it. And I think that's really important to listen, because as a parent, you want to help them. You want to touch them and hold them and calm down. And with the autistic one, if I touched him when he was in that sort of area, it hurts. He couldn't bear a gentle touch. So there's a huge learning curve that parents like me that got kids like mine, and the best thing to do is just step away. However difficult that is, just step away and keep yourself safe.
Do you get to talk to any other parents that are going through something similar? Is there any parent support groups in your area, or is there anything like that within Lancashire and South Cumbria to any of our other guests?
Not that I know of.
Right. Okay.
In terms of support between parents, I know obviously services like the Wish Centre and Les support parents, but I don't know of any parent-to-parent support group.
Right.
Sorry, Sam. I can only think of support groups like kind of for parents of children with autism or ADHD, that kind of thing. Yeah. But I can't think of anything specific around this topic that we've got available.
And do you think that's because of the stigma associated towards it? Yeah.
I think people just don't know it really happens.
Yeah, I think that's more the case.
And can I ask then, do you think that that's because parents don't want to talk about it? Do you think a lot of parents kind of feel that I don't know, that it might be their responsibility, so they try to cover it up. They don't want to sort of share that with people. Do you think that's one of the issues? They're fearful of sharing it. I'm not sure.
I think, again, going from kind of experience of the families I've worked with, and I'm sure Les and Robin can give other examples as well, but it's that, I suppose, lack of recognition for what it actually is. You know, you might get parents come to you saying, my child's off the rails, or my child's out of control. And it's that, I suppose, in some respects, failure to recognise, both as parents and professionals, actually this is very specifically domestic abuse, and there is a big lack of recognition. But I think from certainly families I've worked with, and I know, Soph, you said you didn't really feel ashamed, but a lot of families do, and they don't want to be labelled as being that bad parent. And, you know, it's up to us as professionals, again, to acknowledge that this is happening, and it doesn't make you a bad parent. It's not down to bad parenting. There's lots of reasons that contribute to it. You know, and bad parenting isn't one of those blame factors.
So in terms of you, Soap, if you don't mind me asking, did you get any sort of negative things said towards you in regards to your sort of parenting or anything, or not?
Yeah, loads. Yeah, lots, because like I said, the school didn't believe there was actually anything wrong with the younger version. This is a child that's just got an EHCP. I guess I was in a different set of circumstances. His older brother used to have tantrums. So I was used to a child kicking off in public. I was used to turning around to, be careful what you say, turning around to parents that may not understand what was going on and explain to them very clearly and concisely that my child's autistic, and could they just back off? It made me, so I was used to it. So when I wasn't used to the violence towards myself, but I was used to a child that kicked off in public. That was nothing new. As to negative, the work, it's very, very difficult for people outside these professions to recognise that a child could even be abusive to a parent.
Yeah, I think
it's always been the other way around.
People don't realise that it happens.
Yeah, they just think it's the child out of control,
yeah,
or that the parent's done something to antagonise the child, or who knows, or it's just teenage angst. It's different. It really is different. I mean, both my kids are now in their teens, the joy. And there is a huge difference between the recalcitrant attitude of a teenager and what I get off the younger version when he's in the moment. It's not the same.
Are there any sort of signs that we can sort of look out for in regards to potentially, you know, a colleague or a friend that might be potentially being abused by their child? Is there any signals that we could pick up on? This is to anyone.
Really difficult. I mean, I would say if you looked at in the playground in the primary school, for example, whether everyone's, well, they were before COVID came along, where everyone was meeting, you would probably be able to tell, if you knew what you're looking for, a parent that's having real trouble with their child. They'll be the one that is either trying very hard to be I hate this phrase, yummy mummy, or will be the one that's sat all on their own, and that they look dreadful, they look tired, they've gone grey, they can't communicate properly with people, they look like they're intensely shy, but it's not that. It's because they're broken. The kid's broken the parent. I think it's really, really difficult. Yeah. And I think the other thing that makes it really difficult is that lots of us parents, but got kids like we've got additional needs too. So the mental health of parents with kids like mine is quite often quite poor. So that just exacerbates the problem, because take it from me, when I'm having a moment because of EUPD and I'm in a terrible place because my emotions are all over the place, and then I've got kids like mine, it really doesn't help. And if you've had the courage to go and talk to somebody and they turn around and say, well, it's your fault, it's your crap parent, you're never going to say it again. To be fair, healthcare, oh no, that's not true. Cams did say that once, but that was years ago. But mostly, since I've become more articulate and more able, things have got better. But I was really fortunate. We have a service called IPTIS, which is intensive psychotherapy service, and you can only get referred to tertiary. So I had to go with the community mental health team, and I had CAT, cognitive ability and cognitive analytical therapy. I knew what that is really, and that gave me my life back. So once I got my head back, I could deal better with the behaviours I was getting in the house. But it's interesting to note for me that his behaviours didn't get any better when I got better.
Yeah, can I just say as well, it's the same that when you're saying about signs, can we look for signs? People who are in, whether it's an abusive relationship with, you know, a partner, or whether it's a child who's harming a parent, it's the same effects. It's, you know, tread on eggshells. It's being like you said, you're scared of them, and it's all them same things that we'd look out for.
Yeah.
In the abusive intimate relationship as it is with this as well.
Yeah. So, for example, it could be like telling lies about why they don't want to go to social gatherings or meeting up with people, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Unexplained bruises.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
If the child gets near them.
Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing your experiences. I could keep firing questions at you, but I'm conscious that we've already gone over half an hour. So I just want to now, we'll go to you, Leanne. I know we spoke briefly about what you want to touch on. So the first point was just the types of abuse that young people can be involved in. Just to start with that, and then sort of the prevalence and the main underlying reasons would be fantastic.
Yeah, so again, you know, similar to what Robin was just saying in terms of kind of signs looking out for, the types of abuse are not vastly different to what you would see within kind of adult relationships. I think a bigger factor with young people who want to harm parents, or young people who harm other young people, there is a really high level of emotional abuse in there. It doesn't always, I think it's much less around the physical abuse, although we acknowledge that physical abuse does take place, but it's a lot around the emotional stuff. You know, you don't love me, I hate you, you know, that kind of thing. Certainly from a contextual point of view, you know, kind of with the increase, I suppose, in gangs and drugs and things that we're seeing, there's a lot of financial abuse, so demanding money from parents, kicking off when parents don't want to give it, stealing, you know, taking whatever they need to take to get the money for whatever it is that they need it for. But I think one thing that does really stick out for young people, and I think possibly we would see it more in perhaps young person to young person, but we do see it in young person to parent as well, is the digital technological means of abusing. So sending the text messages, threatening that they're gonna, you know, put stuff out on social media about the other person, that kind of thing. So the types of abuse are not vastly different. I think we just see it in a slightly different way. I don't know if Les, if you've got any different experiences.
No, I agree with you really. This programme that Robin and I are going to be starting, as I say, we can take it in turns, but I'll be working with the adult, and Robin will be working with the young person, and we will do like a video, and we will show it to the adults, and we will show it to the child, and it does work. You know, it really does work. I think it's so sad that services are all different all over the country, and people are getting such poor services in some parts of the country and some better ones in other parts.
I'm presuming, Soph, that, you know, we mentioned before, you've heard of nothing like this around your area.
And to be honest, due to my own mental health issues, I would never join a group. I hate groups. I hate being judged. You just want to hide in the corner and put a blanket over your head.
So to go back to you, Leanne. So what are the differences between a child who harms and an adult perpetrator?
So I think for me, and again, perhaps one of the others can jump in on this as well. I think for me, the biggest difference is if services and professionals can get in with a young person early doors, behaviours can be changed. When you leave it to kind of go into adulthood, it's much more difficult to change that pattern of behaviours and redirect it. So I think that's probably, for me, the biggest difference between the two, making sure we've got that support in to change those behaviours that we see with this kind of controlling, abusive behaviours towards another person.
And you've also put down one of the points that you wanted to touch on was all about parents as a victim and victim blaming. Could you just touch on that as well? Would that be okay?
Yeah. I think Soph touched on it before, really, in what she was saying. Parents do feel very much like everybody's looking at them. Other parents are blaming them, professionals are going to blame them, and it kind of, again, is that stigma around it. Actually, I'm a bad parent because my child is behaving like this. What have I done wrong? And I think that's a really big thing. I don't think that is unusual in terms of victims, because I think if you look at adult victims, they question, what have I done wrong? I must have done something to cause this behaviour to happen. But I do think it's, certainly in adults, domestic abuse is much more widely recognised and there's much more services available. When you come to young people, actually, I think, again, you touched on before, so you don't want to criminalise your child. They're not frightened of phoning the police, but they don't want to phone the police because they don't want to criminalise the child, which, it's not ideal. It's not something you want your child to be carrying you through for the rest of their life, because with the right support and the right services in place, you have got the opportunity to completely turn that child's behaviour around. I think the key is we don't have those services widely available, and I think that comes down to the fact it's not massively recognised as being a problem in and of its own.
So what
sounds,
sorry, Les, go on.
I was just going to say, so for none of this sounds a silly question, but is there anything that you do specifically for you that is just for you, that is your time? What do you do?
Running.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's your space, your time. No one encroaches on that. That's really good, because I think that's what you need, to have something that's just yours. That you're not a mum, you're not anything else. You're just you running.
But I have to say, I struggle with running when I'm having a really rough time. I haven't done it very much over the last month, and I have seriously missed it. So yeah, I do it just for me, and it's where I learned compassion. Oh dear. Where I learned to have compassion for myself in running, which sounds so odd because running can be a bit, let's see how far I can push my body. But actually, I learned how to be compassionate for myself within running. And I then had to transfer that skill set into the rest of my life. And it was my therapist, Monty Cat, that recognised that. So if I can't run or don't run, I definitely get negatively affected. Now, we've moved house and all sorts of stuff's gone on this month, so it's all gone out the window. But I'm getting to the stage where I see other people run, and it makes me cry because I'm not doing it. It's a real, I can't even explain it, but it's the oddest thing. But I sort of need, I do wish that some people around here that I'm chatting to were a bit closer and then give me a kick out the door and get me going again.
I'm gonna start ringing you now and get out the door.
Could I add something on from what Leanne's just said? And it's a bit of what Leanne said and a bit of what Soph said. Really, is we always think about like who are the audience that are watching this show, and whenever we've talked about abuse in the past, we're not exactly putting this show out to the abusers and saying stop abusing people, but we're putting it out to other people. Now, when you talk there about the stigma, it's thinking about where that stigma comes from, and I see there's a bit of an opportunity here, because the stigma within an abusive relationship, when it's kind of partner on partner, it's usually the perpetrator that is the one that's saying this is all your fault and drumming into the person's head as a form of the abuse from within, this is all your fault. But from what Soph's saying there, it's other parents and other people and people within the community that are kind of maybe not deliberately sitting there and pointing the finger saying this is all your fault, but having those implications, saying things that are like, oh, well, surely you can manage this, or surely you can control this, or what have you done, or whatever it might be. And that is our audience. Our audience is society. And that's what we can do here, is we can normalize this conversation and actually put it on people's radar. This is happening to people. Here's how we can be a little bit more compassionate about that. And at least we can maybe battle a little bit of that stigma, because most people listening might have never even thought that. They see a child misbehaving, And probably, it is, there are times it's down to negligent parents, but it's knowing that it's not always down to that, and it's, the behavioral difficulties are a real thing. A parent, can be experiencing violence, whether that is physical or verbal, from a child, and it does break the person down, like you've said. And I think we could all have a little bit more compassion when we see that and try and not judge so quickly.
Yeah. And I think as well, exactly what you just said, Dave, people have this impression of negligent parenting. And, I'm not saying there are some parents that aren't negligent, but it's about, understanding what's perhaps behind that negligence. Does that parent who's negligent have mental health problems? Have they had an upbringing where they've been exposed repeatedly to domestic abuse? So for them, having domestic abuse within the household, whether it be from a partner or from a child, is a perfectly normal way of life. Parents are negligent generally because of another cause. I don't think any parent just goes out of the way to think, I've had kids and, they can sit on their own and I'm not going to be a parent. There's generally something behind that. And I think it's just having that understanding that there's something behind that, and just being kind to people. People don't be negligent to the kids on purpose, generally. And like you said before, it's just moving away from that, blaming the parent when this is happening. Kids as young as 5 are starting, sometimes with these abusive behaviours, and yes, there's quite often something behind it. It could be a learning difficulty, it could be mental health problems with the child, but there also could be something else going on in the family. And I think if you look at statistics, and different statistics do show slightly different things, but as a general rule, there is a good proportion of children that harm the parents that have actually, the parent has been a victim of partner abuse as well. That child has witnessed it, has seen it, not in all cases, but in a lot of cases. And that behaviour to that child is normal because that's what they've lived in. But as we said before, I think it's just recognising it, as a thing in and of its own, and being able to support those parents, because they may have had it from a partner and then they're getting it from a child as well. They don't know where to go and what to do, and they've got their own things going on, because as Saul said, there's massive impact on your mental health, even without, if you've got other mental illnesses as well. Even a parent who has no mental illness, it is going to have a massive impact on their mental health, and then that affects their ability to be able to parent appropriately, or put those barriers in place, or boundaries, or whatever other people think actually a good parent should look like. They're doing a bloody good job given the situation that they're in most cases.
Yeah, I was just going to say as well, Leanne, I agree with that. If you think of a normal child in a family, if they're seeing the parents abusing them, the mother, vice versa, they do grow up thinking that is normal. This is what happens. And how are they to learn any difference?
So do you think then, something that I've come across more frequently within schools, that pornography is contributing to this as well, in terms of how young people are treating other young people? Would you agree or not? Because what I've found is a lot of young boys in particular are putting more young women in situations where they're being pressurised to do things that they don't want to do. Do you think that is a contributor?
I think what's maybe not helped is PHSE used to be compulsory in schools, and then it became what's the word I'm looking for? You could do it or you couldn't. And now, last September, it has now become compulsory again in schools. And unfortunately, schools haven't been in. But they will be teaching about healthy relationships and what is acceptable to partners. And they're going to start at very, very young ages, from primary school all the way through. I'm a firm believer in the education of what is and isn't right, and how young people treat each other. And I think that there's a lot to answer for that, really, as to why it's not been highlighted within schools. And when you talk to some young people, it's quite shocking that they don't even realise that it's not acceptable, the way that someone's treating them. it's just normal.
Picking up on the point, Sam, of the pornography, I think it's so much more easily available now. You know, they can get it online. You know, they're seeing it through social media. You know, I'm going to show my age a little bit now. When I was in my teens, phones didn't exist. The internet didn't exist. So it wasn't such a factor. But I think now, for kids, it is.
It's already available, isn't it?
Yeah, you know, it's there in the face, and like you say, it's that understanding of what is a normal relationship. And again, you know, when research has been done around kind of the sexual abuse with young people, 1/3 of girls report being sexually abused and by other young people, and this is before the age of 18. And that for me is really, really frightening.
It is.
Really frightening. And I do think it's just because it's in the face, they've got it there and access to it all the time.
Yeah, and what's sad as well is it's quite extreme pornography as well. It's like revenge type pornography.
Yeah,
it's not your
absolutely.
soft porn, for example. When I was in school, your magazines at the top shelf or whatever. I've had young people come up to me in primary schools with extreme porn on the phones, which is really, really worrying. Anyway, we're digressing a bit here. I'm conscious of time. So I'm going to go to Les now, and then we'll come to you, Robin, to talk about the Wish Centre. Les, could you just tell us more about your role, sort of your experiences within your job as well? That'd be fantastic. And anything else you want to touch on?
Okay. Basically, it's a new role that was created. It's domestic abuse has always been something I've been very passionate about, and I've been quite lucky, really, to be given free rein and do what I want to a certain degree. So just touching what I was saying before, we're developing in Blackpool something called a charter mark. We had originally got one about beating bullying, which has been introduced into schools. Give you a cut down version is bronze, silver and gold awards, and it's in primary and secondary school. Teachers have to do certain things, the pupils have to do certain things, the governors have to do certain things to achieve this award. It's ideal for Ofsted because it shows that they're doing the work. But we are now developing it with healthy relationships. We want from the very young ones to know what they can do, what is acceptable. And it's not just talking, when I'm talking about relationships, it's talking about friends as well. What is it okay for my friend to say that to me? And I think if you give young people the tools to understand what is acceptable and what isn't, then hopefully they will be more likely to challenge it as they grow older. So that's something we're hoping to launch. Well, it's going to be probably like November this time. Something that I've also been doing in Blackpool, not with young people. Well, actually, yes, we're with young people. There are certain things called community protection warnings, community protection notices, then it can go to an injunction. And I was working on a case, the young girl is 14, her boyfriend was 16. He was giving her weed, he's been beating her up. She was totally and utterly besotted with him. She couldn't see any wrong. So what we've tried in Blackpool is issuing what we call a community protection warning. So it was to tell him they had certain conditions that he wasn't allowed to see her without her parents' permission. He wasn't allowed to give her weed. He wasn't, certain things. And if he breached that, then it would go to a community protection notice, which unfortunately he did. And now he's now been served with an abduction notice, which means he can't have any contact with this young girl anymore. He'd been in a relationship with her since she was 12 and he was 14. It seems to be working because she now seems to be in another relationship with somebody else. It is new that we're trying this. Basically, we will use anything if it can help any sort of victim whatsoever. We do a lot with White Ribbon, which is the charity for people who suffer domestic abuse. We have a fantastic organisation, a charity covers Blackpool, Fylde and Wye called Fylde Coast Women's Aid, and they have independent domestic abuse advocates, but they also have specialist domestic abuse advocates. So they have a specialist stalking advocate. They have a specialist BMAE advocate. They have a specialist advocate for the elderly, and they also have a male advocate. Because let's not forget, males do suffer as well. So that is absolutely brilliant. We could always do with more, but you know, it's something that's groundbreaking. Something else I'm going to be looking at is abuse in the older generation, for the simple sort of things as well, what you were saying, so that it's accepted, that's the way you're brought up. You know, my dad hit my mum, that's what happens. And it's been sort of really underreported and under-recorded about how much actually happens. And to give an older person the confidence to actually leave an abusive relationship where they may have been with this person for 40, 50 years, it's very, very difficult. So we're hoping to do work on that as well. I think that's about it really, Sam. I mean, I could go on and on forever, but I'm conscious of the time. You're on mute. How many times have we said that? We should have it. You're on mute, Sam.
That's new. Sam's never been on mute before, actually. It's usually me. Sam, we can't hear you. Have you unplugged your microphone? You want me to ask questions? Robin, you've been sat there patiently for a long period of time. I don't know what the question Sam wanted to ask you was, but could you tell us a bit more about the work that you do, please?
So I'll focus on obviously RIP because that's what we'll talk about today. So like we said, we work with Les in Blackpool, and we're also doing it in Blackpool Down, obviously where the Wish Centre is based, and then eventually over Lancashire as well. And it is just about working with the families, a parent and a young person, and getting that healthy relationship back, getting that sort of level of control back as well. Because like Leanne was saying about when, if a child has grown up in an abusive household and that sort of thing, and there's been one parent's been abusive to the other, then in a healthy relationship, or a healthy family, you've got two parents at the top of the triangle and the child at the bottom. So the parents are in control, they're the parents and the child's the child. But when in an abusive relationship, that triangle sort of moves, and the perpetrator's at the top, the other parents in the middle, and the child could be at the bottom, or that could move as well. The child could actually end up above the other parent. So when someone leaves an abusive relationship with the child and that perpetrator is gone, that power imbalance could still be had where the child's above the other parent. So that's something as well to bear in mind when we're thinking about causes and why children might harm. We said about the trauma, we said about, learned behaviours, but it's also that control as well. And RIP focuses on that. It focuses on other causes as well, like we said about learning difficulties, even mental health, it's all worked into that. And there's some exercises, that might be tailored towards, especially with the parents, tailored towards a parent who's been through domestic abuse, but that can also be changed to be whatever, like Les said earlier, we tailor it towards what that family needs as well. Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned earlier about the fact that obviously if you get in earlier enough with these things, that behaviours can be changed. So what sort of things are there out there? What advice is there for anyone that is struggling with this, with their, with they're receiving abuse from their children? What can they do about it?
I'd say just get help, just get the support that's needed, because you can't do anything on your own. Do you know what I mean? Whether it's in a healthy relationship, you need support. You go to your friends and you get that help if you've had an argument, and it should be the same thing with this. But obviously, the extra support, whether it's from services, me and Les, or the police, and they can direct you to who's needed. And it's just getting that support and that help that's needed, I think.
And the recognition that it's not your fault, first and foremost, and that there is help out there, and to ask. Don't just sit there and suffer in silence.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing, is to ask for help in the first place, I think, and to recognise that I do need this help.
Yeah. Have we got Sam back?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there he is.
I'm sorry, I accidentally pressed it on my on the cable here. What I was going to ask, and this can go to any of the professionals. I'm sure that you will come across cases that are really challenging and upsetting. How do you look after yourselves? Do you have supervision yourselves as well? Do you get the opportunity to offload? Because I know from my experiences of coming across children some of them that have been abused or vice versa, I personally find that quite challenging and hard to process. So I'm just wondering what do you do to sort of offload all that? I suppose to all three of you actually.
I think for me, it is again, it's just that speaking to somebody, recognizing actually this has had an impact on me, this has been quite traumatic, even though it's not my story. You kind of experiencing this, what the parents telling you, and some of the things you hear are really traumatic. And I think for me, it's just I've got a great team around me. I have got other professionals who do similar roles I can pick the phone up to and say, I need to offload this. What do you think? Have I said the right thing? And it's just about having that debrief and that's somebody to talk to. And I think, that's the important thing, like Robin just said, just having that somebody to talk to and recognising, actually, I'm struggling with this. I need some help.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm the same. I've got a fantastic team. We all kind of know each other, and we all know when we're dealing with something that's bad. And we can all sort of pick up on each other as to, do you want to talk or whatever. But just being in a safe place to be able to feel that you can talk about it and to offload to a colleague who understands without having to try and explain it to somebody who has no idea what you're talking about. But it is really, really
I think
important.
as well.
Sorry, I was just going to say it's really important.
I know what
we do keep ourselves safe, because how can we do our job well if we're suffering as well?
Yeah. Sorry, go on, Robin.
I know when I'm doing sessions with clients, I also work with adults that have been through partner abusive relationships as well. And I just try and, obviously we're talking about serious things and they know we're talking about serious things, but they don't want to get depressed about it and be doom and gloom. So it's about having a laugh as well aside of that. So when they think back to the session, they might smile about something I said or they said. And when I think back to that as well, I'm not thinking about all the horrible things that's happened to them or they might have done. I'm thinking about that one joke we had about something that was on TV, something like that. And it's making that enjoyable experience for me and for the clients as well.
Yeah, perfect. So what I'll do now is, Dave, is there any comments or questions in the chat? We'll go to there.
There's actually no questions today, and just a couple of comments. One saying, such an amazing and insightful talk. Big props to Soph, she's so brave. And someone says, I'm proud of all of you. Keep doing the good job, especially Robin. Keep it up. So that's it. We've
Brilliant.
We've got.
Brilliant. If anyone does have any questions, please do put them into the chat now. And as I've said, afterwards you can email me on sam.tyrer, TYRER at lscft.nhs.uk. So I guess really to all of our guests, is there anything that you just want to end on saying? Any piece of advice for anyone to take away or anything you like?
What I wanted to say, Sam, was that I don't know whether people are aware, there's a new bill just gone through that's been ratified called the Domestic Abuse Bill. It was only ratified on the 28th of April. But one of the major changes in that is that children who witness or experience domestic abuse are now regarded as victims in their own right. And I think that's really, really important that they are recognised as that. If my advice would be, don't sit in silence. It's not your fault, and speak to someone about it and get help.
So, did you want to come in as well then?
Yeah, there's this is a bit of a weird thing because obviously I come from a different area, but how does somebody get some help? Who do they go to? And if they go to somebody, are they going to know where to signpost them? I mean, if this is as under-recorded as we think it is, somebody might not know what to do with that person. And actually, that's just going to undermine them. And the other thing, on a much more positive note, is there is always hope, even on your darkest moment, even when it's absolutely drastic. There is always hope, always.
Perfect. Robin?
Yeah, I'd just say as well, speak out. And just to answer so, I'd say go to any domestic abuse charity, any domestic abuse support service. We've only just got this RIP program. There wasn't something in place to support families this, but we were still there for them. We still had IDVAs that could deal with it. We still give the advice and support that might be needed as well.
Thank you. And Liam?
Yeah, I'm going to reiterate the same thing. It's, I suppose, take hope, as so said, in the fact that things are changing, things are being recognised, services are starting to be put in place that deal with this specifically. But it is just that speak out, speak to a friend. Sometimes, the old "a problem shared is a problem halved." Go to your children's school. Speak to a health professional. Just speak to somebody, because once you've opened kind of that gate and you've spoke to somebody, they have then got a duty to help you and support you and act on that information that you have given, and they will have to try and find a direction in which to point you. They might not know themselves, but we will try and support you the best we can and try and point you in the right direction. But we can only do that if we're aware that it's going on.
And I think taking that very, very first step is the biggest hurdle, because once you've actually shared it with someone, it does get easier to be able to talk about it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for all of you today, joining us on this webinar. It's really insightful. A huge thank you to So for sharing your experiences. I know how difficult that has been. And if you could just stay on the call when we finish the live stream, that'd be excellent. Dave, is there anything you want to say?
No, there's just one resource that I found while we've been chatting, which is familylives.org.uk, who have got a helpline specifically geared for parents with children with challenging behaviour. Including violence, and they've got a free helpline, which I've put the details of that in chat now, but it's familylives.org.uk. Again, so many people don't know where to reach out to, and but the other thing I would say is if you are struggling with that, look up what you're struggling with, followed by peer support, and see if there is anything within your area. And again, we always say about using the Hub of Hope. There's more and more charities that are coming online with the Hub of Hope now. So if you kind of look through the Hub of Hope for your area, that you might actually find there's not enough resources. There's not enough resources. That is true, but there's usually more resources than what we're aware of.
Perfect. I guess then we'll round this up, and thank you very much for joining us today. If you can share this afterwards, that would be absolutely fantastic. I don't think there is a webinar next week, and just to let you all know, myself and Dave will be finishing the Mental Health Family Hour towards mid-June, where there will be no more episodes. So thank you for joining us. We really, really appreciate your time, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.